And do you want that view or you want you smaller?
I don't care.
I just don't want to, I get distracted sometimes when,
You look beautiful.
God does not like it when you don't tell the truth, Angie, but thank you. Well, I have some notes on my phone, and first of all, I'd just like to say how much I've missed gathering with y'all the last 9 months. I've seen Jim a couple times as I've passed through the library, and I've seen Hannah several times. I mean, we work on the same floor, but we rarely see each other. I see Angie's comments on our common friends on Facebook, but Mark, I don't think I've seen you at all since March, I guess.
I see Jim over at the rec center,
But it's been God is good. I just have to say that I have had so many experiences with friends over these months. Wandering Wanda has still got to do a little bit of wandering. I have a friend in Florida that I've visited, and then she's been up here, and she's one of my college friends. And so we've had a group of college friends together a couple of times. And, you know, we've tried to be especially careful. And then I've got another couple that I'm good friends with, and I've traveled a little bit with them. And I travel some with my cousins. Was at the beach over Thanksgiving with my cousins. But it's just been a blessing to have people around and to just feel so frustrated for people who have been secluded. I do want to share praise with you. My friend who has been working in the Middle East for the last 3 years has been home since early October and will be home until February. She and I were roommates for several years before she went to the Middle East. But she's been spending most of her time with her parents because her mama needs her baby at home with her. But it's been fun to have her too. So as I was kind of trying to ponder what I would share today about seeing God's hand in biology, first thing I thought of was some of the people that are a part of this group who are also biology people and science people, and Angie has a nursing background. And I thought they're going to know some of these same things, but I don't mind people telling me things that I already know if they're telling me them from their perspective and talking about how they have seen those things play out in conversations about spiritual things. So I just started kind of brainstorming places in my life as a biology teacher that I got to have God conversations. And I started with 1990. I was teaching at Spartanburg High School. And as most of you know, I've always enjoyed the outdoors and having adventures and whatnot. So I said, I need to start a student group. And we pondered what we would call it. And at first, when we were doing the organizational meetings, I said, come at this time if you are interested in a nature outdoorsy kind of club. And so we called it the Nature Outdoorsy kind of club for a while until we kind of had a little voting, and we called it the Wildlife Club. And we did lots of adventures. It got really huge. It became the biggest club at Spartanburg High School, and we charged $5 dues per year. So I would have $500 or $600 in our treasury just from membership, but not all those people ever did anything. We might have 20 or 25 that was a core group. And whenever we did an outing, I limited it to 12 because I could have a 15-passenger van and everybody still have room to do stuff. And we would have a meeting each month and have some sort of speaker. We had Rudy Mankey and others in the field.
That's legit, Wanda.
Oh yeah, Rudy's legit. Rudy's brother Jim and I dated for years. We are still very good friends. Jim was a guidance counselor at Spartanburg High School, so I had an in with Rudy.
Okay.
But yeah, we did a lot of neat stuff. We had a big recycling project at school, and we had an outing every month as well as the speaker. But I tended to attract, I guess is the best word, the kind of hippie or free thinking sorts, you know. And so many of them were not believers. And so I consciously tried to use our outings to point out my personal wonder at nature. And we always, whenever we went on a hike, I always made us stop at some point and everybody just sit down and be still and be quiet and listen. And it was kind of interesting that that club started maybe a year or so before that. So this was in 1990 that I kind of started pondering about this. So the whole concept of be still, be quiet, and listen in nature was, you know, that was me. I like to just do that. And I found all kinds of excuses when I was teaching to go out on the nature trail at school. I mean, we'd be studying the nervous system and I'd say, okay, we're going on the nature trail. And they're all looking at me like, bring a piece of paper. And oh, you ruin everything, Miss Cromer. Bring a piece of paper. And we'd sit down and I'd be like, okay, we're just going to listen. I want you to write down everything you hear. And then we'd touch some things, and you know, we try to use all. We got up to a tree and smelled the tree, just so we could be outside. But as we were doing the whole be still, be quiet, and listen thing, I would kind of draw it to a close by saying something like, is this not amazing that we have this wonderful world and we are created with the senses with which to appreciate it? And, you know, I didn't preach, but tried to plant some seeds. And the summer of 1990 was the first summer that I worked at Yellowstone during that summer. And as I was preparing to go, God said to me in almost an audible voice, be still, be quiet, and listen. And he's given me that theme recurring throughout my life. And I think there are times, you know, when we all need to just quit with the rushing around or worrying or whatever. Just be still and be quiet and listen. So that came about as a part of a biology thing. As you would imagine, whenever, and we were all expected to teach about evolution, it's part of the state standards. When I started teaching AP biology, there's always a section on the exam having to do with evolution. And I'm a strong proponent of the concept of microevolution. We can see the results of mutations in populations and how they affect the number of individuals that have certain traits for a period of time. Even looking at something like genetically engineered bacteria that we use to grow products, insulin and other products that bacteria are used for. The research tells us that when we take those genetically engineered bacteria out of the lab and back into nature, or allow that population that's been cultivated to just do their natural thing, that they will go back to the state that they were before they were genetically engineered. Obviously, it takes generations. So when you look at microevolution, the ways that populations change over time with certain traits, it's observable. Can you see or hear me? Good, okay, because we lost you for a minute. When we start discussing evolution to the point of seeing one type of organism change into another type of organism. That's where most Christians, creationists, begin to balk at the concept of evolution. And that's where the weakest evidence is. The fossil record has been used to show macroevolution, as we call it. And that's where there's a lot of debate about whether or not that evidence is as strong as it is sometimes given to be. So I've invited students, when we discuss evolution, to ask their questions, to ask questions of me, to ask questions of their youth leader, their parents, anybody else, and to keep asking those questions, because I believe that the debate about evolution is going to be an ongoing debate. And I became very enamored with the concept of intelligent design and went to quite a few conferences about intelligent design, which is different from creation in that it is not deemed to be biblical, but it's deemed to focus on the fact that things are designed, they are purposeful. You know, when you look at the difference in the definition between evolution and intelligent design, evolution is a purely natural process that requires a tremendous amount of time, a series of random changes over a long period of time, series of accidents over millions of years. And intelligent design is a purposeful plan. And there have been some proponents of evolution who have even said, well, many of the things that we witness in the natural world seem to be designed. And I just want to say, so why are you fighting it? You know, and I have said this to students. I mean, I can't teach evolution without pointing out the fact that there are so many things. And when I get to, you know, evolution is an introductory concept when you teach biology, because the field of biology is centered around evolution and how things came to be as they are. But when we get into more microscopic or biochemical things like discussing DNA, or even the second concept that we focus on when teaching a year of biology is usually biochemistry. And so we talk about what makes up living things, and we talk about carbohydrates and fats and proteins, and then we get down and dirty into things like the amino acids that make up the proteins. And we talk about gosh, the guy's name just left me. I meant to have a picture to share with y'all. Miller, the Miller, and the other guys, something starts with U. But they did the concept where they took a bunch of chemicals and put them in a setting similar to what we think the early Earth was like, with sulfur and the right temperature, an energy source like lightning. And there are some amino acids that will accumulate, but they're short-lived. There are a lot of problems with that proposal, that model, I guess is the best word for it. And the other thing about laboratory constructed amino acids is that they are often the wrong-handed. Amino acids have variation in their types, and we refer to them as being left-handed or right-handed. And you have experience with this from trying to put on gloves, or if you were a left-handed person and you were playing softball or something and you didn't have your own glove and you tried to use a wrong-handed glove, you know that does not work as well. And sometimes it just doesn't work at all. The same concept can be applied to amino acids and how they work. So to have an artificially created amino acid in the lab is just the first step in the problem. It must be the correct-handed one. You know, if you think about your chemistry classes, you unless you took organic chemistry, Did anybody in here ever take organic? Angie, I'm sure you did. John did. Unless you take organic chemistry, you're not prompted to think about the three-dimensional aspect of molecules. And once you think about, oh, well, that has to be constructed this way instead of this way in order for it to fit with all of these other things. When you have a string of amino acids that make up a protein, it has to fold in just the right way in order to fit, for instance, an enzyme. Y'all are using enzymes right now while you're eating. You've got some enzymes in your mouth. Salivary amylase is an enzyme that does the first steps of breaking down carbohydrates in your mouth. If salivary amylase is not shaped just right, then it can't fit onto the carbohydrates to break them down. Well, what makes that shape is this string of amino acids that have to be in just the right sequence, and each amino acid has to be the right handedness, so that as it folds up, here we have an amino acid that has a side group that has a positive charge, and down here we have one that has a negative charge. Oh, okay, so that makes it fold just like this. And just extrapolate that to the whole string of amino acids, and you've got the pleated sheet type of thing. They'll fold in this way, they'll coil. One clump of amino acids will fit into another clump, and they have to fit exactly the right way to make what we call the active site of that enzyme so that it does what it does. What are the chances that that happens by accident? I mean, I can't teach that without pausing to say, are you seeing how specifically designed this has to be to work correctly? And then the next few chapters, we're looking specifically at the cell and how the cell works. We've got the phospholipid bilayer that allows things into and out of the cell because of specific channels that are made. Those channels are made of proteins that have to be constructed of amino acids that fold in just the right way, because if they aren't, then they have the wrong polarity in this channel that protein makes, and whatever's supposed to move in and out that channel can't. So we actually see diseases that occur when those things don't work properly. Some of the things that people can take medication for are helping those, introducing the enzymes that are lacking, so helping the digestive process or some other process. But when you stop and look at how those things happen through the process of genetics, then it begins to get even more minute, because an amino acid is made through a process called protein synthesis. Protein synthesis occurs in each new cell because each cell can make a copy of its DNA to pass on to the next cell. And so when the first cell is making its copy, there are all kinds of things that can go wrong. We have skin cancer because the sun affects certain nitrogen bases that are in DNA and makes them get wonky. And so the cell takes on, the DNA takes on a misshapen form, and it actually passes it on to other cells, which are also misshapen. So we begin to see that things break down when these minute biological processes don't happen as they should. Sickle cell anemia is something that most of us have heard of and have some knowledge of. It has a tremendous number of effects on the populations that experience that. You have a red blood cell that, rather than being the disc shape that it should be, has a sickled shape. Hemoglobin is a protein that's formed by protein synthesis, made up of amino acids, And because one part of the DNA that codes for that hemoglobin is out of whack, then the hemoglobin is misshapen. The whole cell is misshapen. The first problem is hemoglobin carries what?
Oxygen.
Oxygen. So the person who has misshapen hemoglobin has difficulty with oxygen getting around their body. Well, that's pretty critical. They have a lot of muscle cramps. They have little endurance. The other thing is the misshapen, so the sickle-shaped cells will fit together in a way that they're not designed to. Normally, these flexible disc-shaped cells just kind of squeeze past each other and flex so well as they move through blood vessels. But these sickle-shaped cells lock into each other, and you get a log jam, and they block the blood vessels. It is such a minute change in the DNA. It is one nitrogen base. You've probably seen the A, C, T, and G when people talk about genetics. In fact, there's even a movie called Gattaca, Gattaca. So A, C, T, and G are abbreviations for adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine, which are the nitrogen bases. You knew that, right? They're giving me looks, Angie. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. But so that the one of those nitrogen bases is wrong, and it results in a person who has sickle cell anemia, and it impacts their life tremendously. And here's the good news. If I was teaching in a Christian school, I would stop right there and I would say, or if I was teaching in a group with a group of students that I knew well, and I would often pause and say, all right, guys, I have to go down this road. You don't have to believe this, but I know your other teachers give you their opinions on things. So my opinion is that these mutations do not happen very often, but when they do, they cause significant problems. We look at mutations, we go back to evolution. We look at mutations as being the driving force for evolution, excuse me. If mutations result in changes that make something better, then we should see those kinds of things illustrated throughout history a little bit more clearly. It's difficult to preserve some of the things that we need to see in the fossil record, obviously, so we can't see those. The truth is, and you can research it, the truth is that there are more mutations that are neutral or harmful, many more, like 90+% of mutations either have no effect or have a harmful effect. If they have a harmful effect, then sometimes the cell in which that mutation originally occurs will actually die and not, or the organism that it's a part of. If those cells multiply and become an organism, then that organism will not live. So only a very few mutations actually convey something that is helpful. And so when you look at that fact, and we're looking down at the minutia of microbiology and biochemistry. So we've got an organism, we've got a cell, we've got the microscopic cell stuff, and then we've got the biochemistry that makes up the cell. So we're down there looking at the smallest part of a living thing that we can look at, and we find that it is most of the time working like it's supposed to, like a design. And I can't not bring those things up. I mean, I might be teaching about photosynthesis and walking through the whole process of the parts of the cell and the wavelengths of light and the amount of ATP that's necessary and all this kind of stuff. And I can't tell you how many times I'm, on the board or looking at an overhead or something, and stop and say, but keep in mind, all these specific things happened as a result of a series of accidents over millions of years. And then I just shake my head and continue on. So to be able to point out through biology the hand of God in his design, I mean, people call it intelligent design. I call it God's design. I hope I'm not boring y'all terribly. Thank you.
I love your comment. Wanda makes me want to go back to school.
Another thing that we teach early on is the importance of water. And we start with the structure of water, H2O. Everybody knows that. Okay, but the H2O is designed, we're going even smaller. We're going atomic level now. 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen atom make up a water molecule. It's arranged so that it looks sort of like Mickey Mouse's head. The hydrogens are the ears and the oxygen is the head. Oxygen is something that we call an electron hog, because if it's around anything that has an extra electron, and we're not going to go take a whole chemistry lesson, but you remember there's some atoms that can donate and some that can accept electrons. If there are any free electrons around, oxygen just does just like that. It's called being highly electronegative. So you've got Mickey Mouse head, and over here's another Mickey Mouse head. Well, when they get close to each other, the hydrogens, the ears of this one, connect to the head of this one. So now you've got some water droplets. Well, if they happen to be near a tube, you ever had your blood drawn where they stick blood and put the little capillary tube? What does it do?
Just sucks right up in
It climbs right up in there. The reason it does that is because the tube, and this happens in plants, the tube has charged particles, and it's almost like you can see the molecules climbing up. At the end of that tube in a plant, it goes from the roots all the way up the stem out to the end of the leaves. There's something really cool on the underside of leaves. It's called a stomata. You've heard of people having, perhaps they have a stoma because they've had throat cancer or something. A stoma is an opening. Stomata is the plural. It's like this straw goes all the way to the end of the leaf. And when one water droplet evaporates, the rest of them are holding hands. And so they draw the next water droplet up in there. And so it's a combination of that ability to climb up the tube, which is actually called capillary action, and it's adhesion, adhering to the side, and cohesion, those water molecules holding hands and pulling each other along, that makes that happen. And the root pressure, or just the tendency of those molecules to move up, and evaporation helps that happen. It supports the plant. Think about it happening in a tree. Big old thing. You got a ton of tubes going up through there. Water is critical to the life of plants. Our body is 70+% water. I reckon that's pretty important. Those amino acids that we were talking about earlier that make the proteins, they do their thing as a result of one amino acid connects to another one in a process called condensation synthesis. The 2 amino acids release parts of water and then cling to each other, and a water molecule is formed. Water is critical to everything. Now watch this. Where we are in the universe, we'll keep it to our solar system. Where we are in our solar system makes it possible for water to live on this planet as a solid, liquid, and a gas. And the behavior of water in each one of those phases makes certain life available in each of those phases. Hannah's been to Costa Rica several times, so she knows all about the water vapor that just hangs in the air and keeps the moisture there, and the types of plants that grow in that environment. If you've ever been to Alaska, anybody ever been to Antarctica? But you know from watching National Geographic or PBS or whatever that there are unique organisms that live in those environments. So the state of matter is unique, and the organisms that live there are unique. It is said that one tiny change, and I don't remember the specific, an inch, whatever the angle would be, but one small change in where we are in the solar system would change our climate. And, the battle is raging still about climate change. It's obvious the climate is changing. Is it something to lose our minds over? Maybe not, but human activity does have something to do with that. It's obvious that we can change some of the things we're doing to affect that. But the place where we are in space gives us the ability to support life. And that's why they're looking for water on other planets, because life as we know it is dependent on water. Think about how specifically we are placed. There was a plan. I heard a guy speak one time who is an astrophysicist, a Christian astrophysicist. And so he went on and on and on about where we are in the universe and the tilt of the Milky Way and how our place in this galaxy, in this solar system, our place, the Earth planet, gives us a view of the rest of the solar system that would not be possible were it tilted slightly in another direction. But it's an accident, things just exploded. And so when you look at those kinds of things in teaching biology and you realize that the minutia and the big stuff is all planned, then you have to start thinking about who planned it. Am I planned? I believe that I was created specifically to be in this place at this time, even this moment with you. It's not an accident. I talked to a young lady right before I came in here who I happened to be the person that advised her in the fall. I don't remember how I know what it was. I was just here for some of the days leading up to the beginning of the semester, and they needed help with some orientation people. And so I put some hours out there on my calendar, and I happened to talk to this young lady. And she's been trying to get in touch with her advisor. She came in with an associate's degree, so she's got a department advisor. And she can't get in touch with her advisor. She couldn't find anybody that would actually talk to her or reply quickly to an email. And she's feeling pressure about wanting to change her major. So she found my number and she called right before I came down here. And I didn't have time to finish talking to her. But as we were talking, she interrupted me. She said, I just have to tell you how grateful I am to be able to talk to somebody. And I said, well, I just happened to be here today because I didn't come in at all yesterday. And I just happened to be in my office right now. And I started laughing. I said, I really don't believe that. I believe God intended me to talk to you. So I just learned a long time ago that I can't be shy about what I know of God. He's been too good to me. He saved me from my stupid self so many times that I cannot help but be thankful and want other people to know what I know about him. And so, 30 plus years of teaching biology, some more years of tutoring it, and just the opportunity even here to talk to people about stuff. It's a blessing, and I'm thankful, and I appreciate y'all letting me natter on for a while. Let me look at my notes real quickly. I think I hit on I had two other things. Trying to go from smaller to larger, the balance that we see in nature, the big picture, we see predation. That's harsh. It's hard to watch some of those things on Animal Planet when somebody's ripping somebody else's throat out or whatever. Even predation and rot, stuff stinks. But one of my favorite things in nature is what's called a nurse log. And it is a dead tree on which moss and ferns and even new little trees are growing. So even in death, there is life. And then the last thing I wanted to share is God's words to Adam and Eve in the garden to essentially be a steward, manage this world. And I don't take that lightly. I'm not always faithful to recycle, but I'm pretty faithful to recycle. I'm not always faithful to stay on the trail when I'm hiking, but if I have time, I try to stay on the trail and not take the shortcuts. But those are just some little things about being stewards, and we're stewards of each other as well. You want me to pray? You want me to
Any questions or?
comments? Angie?
What were the influences to help you see or learn the balance, teaching evolution because it's a state mandate and seeing the intelligent design? When did that, who and when did that happen in your career?
It was in the early 90s. Actually, maybe it continued into the mid 90s. I can't remember specifically how I got acquainted with the intelligent design movement, but I went to, like I said, a number of conferences and read a lot of books, and they have been quieter in recent years for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. I think if I had to designate something, the growth in my faith that started in the early 90s. I mean, I became a Christian when I was a kid, but in the early 90s, I really had a revival, and it has continued. Mostly uphill. I've had a few long, but I think as my faith grew and I realized I didn't want to teach evolution per se, but I studied evolution, and the more I studied it, and I think it would be true of anybody, the more you look at it, if you really question it, the more you begin to see, well, that doesn't really make sense. That's not the best explanation. So that's all I got for you on that.
You could speak of like when the evolution moves from fact to, or observable fact to philosophy.
Yeah.
And you've done it also here because your faith gives you the philosophical bent to have joy over
Yes.
nature that you observe.
Yes, it is. It is a dogma, if you will, the philosophical background that one views everything with. But I think if you really begin to question, and if you give the other side a chance, I've continued to look at evolution, and I continue to come up empty. So I always taught it, and especially with AP biology, I would tell them, you have to know this information to be successful on the AP exam. You don't have to believe it as your life's governing facts. It does not have to be your meaning for life. I personally can't live thinking that I'm nothing but a series of accidents over millions of years and I don't really have any purpose and my energy's just gonna go out into the universe. I used to work with somebody who very calmly just said, yeah, my energy, yeah, when I die, my energy will just go into the universe. Okay. Some of that's going to be true because my physical body is going to disintegrate and the energy that holds those bonds together is going to be released into the universe. But the soul and the spirit, that's a different kind of energy that we don't see and observe in chemical bonds, etc. I know where that's going, and I'm gonna have a new body. It's gonna be better than this one. It's not gonna be pudgy around the middle.
Just an observation, because I've read a lot of this stuff already, but it takes just as much faith to believe in evolution as it does to believe in intelligent design, or to believe that somehow God created the world.
Yeah, it does, Jim, and I'm glad you pointed that out because that's always something.
I don't think the people arguing for it realize how much faith they're investing in that randomness.
Yeah.
That they say created everything.
Well,
But
even the missing links in the fossil record or whatever, you're just assuming, and isn't assuming another name for faith? So you're exactly right. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, if you'd close us in prayer, that'd be great.
Well, Father, we are so thankful that we know you and we know that you knew us when we were being created, even before we were being created in our mother's womb. We can't comprehend it, but we know it and we say the words. And Lord, I know the peace that it gives me to recognize that I am yours and that I'm not an accident. Lord, I'm thankful for these who share in at least some of that belief with me here today and those who might see this in the future. I pray that each of us would continually look around and be amazed at all of the things that you have created. And that includes us and the senses with which to appreciate your creation. Lord, I want to pray for Mark's family as they continue to make plans and mourn and live a new life without his mother-in-law. I pray especially for his wife. I pray that you would comfort her and give Mark the wisdom to be part of that comfort. I pray, Lord, for Sarah Campbell as she continues to battle her cancer. I pray that you would strengthen her and Lyle in their faith. Give them people that they can share their faith with as this battle goes on. I pray for my friends who are battling COVID, a mother and daughter. The mother's 92. And I just pray your hand on that situation. Father, I know that if we had taken the time to have prayer requests, there would be many others that our friends would want to pray for. You know them, Lord. You know our hearts. And I pray that you would comfort each one, that you would give us the courage, Lord, to pray out loud with people about their concerns. I thank you for pointing that out to me years ago, that it's good to tell people you're going to pray for them, but what a blessing it has been to pray with people right then and there. I thank you, Lord, that you tore the veil on the day that Jesus died on Calvary, and you made available the Holy Spirit to us so that we can come to you in prayer, knowing that there's nothing between us as long as we've received the gift of salvation from Jesus Christ. Thank you for our time together, Lord. I pray that we'd go out of here inspired and motivated to share your word in our little piece of the world. I pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
Non-recorded right now.